Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
We had a little bit of technical difficulty this morning, but yep, I'm here. And joining us live is Ethan Indigo Smith. Welcome, Ethan.
Peace on earth, Vincent. Thanks so much for having me on. I hope my confusion didn't contribute to the technical problems.
No, I don't think so. I think we did that all by ourselves.
well,
Ethan,
I have my own issue anyway. Thanks so much for having me.
It's our pleasure, Ethan. Ethan, I've been thinking about people, and it's more and more difficult to get along with people because, not from my side so much, but people are getting more pushy. People are getting more me first. People think that they have the right to interfere with what I'm doing. They have to be in my face. They don't pay attention. Just even in Sam's Club, which has a barrier to entry. The barrier to entry at Sam's Club is you've got to pay the membership fee or you're not getting in the door. Okay? Well, I've noticed that people in Sam's Club who are willing to pay that $35, push their shopping cart and they'll just stop in the middle of an aisle, walk around on their phone, totally confused, totally lost, totally out of reality, and they don't care. Or they'll turn the corner and stop in the middle of the corner and leave their shopping cart there, and they'll walk away, or they'll just leave their cart and walk away. And it's not just Sam's Club. I'm just using Sam's Club as an example. Another example is, I bought some soup. Actually, our son bought some soup. He brought it home for the family, and it's Italian wedding soup, and one of the main ingredients in terms of volume is the pasta that they put in, these little pearls of pasta. It's made by a company called Chef's Cupboard, and it's sold by Aldi, and they forgot the noodles. So I try to call them, and there's nobody home. Literally, they say, I'm not here. Since when does a company with with customer service line, a line attached, say, I'm not here? Really? What I'm saying is we're forgetting about the customer. We're forgetting about each other. We're not being polite. People cut me off, and then when I blow the horn to say, have you lost your mind? I almost crashed into you because you cut me off. And what do? They return the favor by giving me the finger. That's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. Is it happening in your neck of the woods, Ethan?
I think it's happening all over, and I don't know where this phrase comes from. I tried to research its origins, but that's really inconsequential to the power of the phrase. Culture runs downstream of government, and government runs downstream of religion. And so what you're talking about is a cultural phenomenon that is influenced by the institutions of the world. And here is the crux, I think, of the matter, where individuals are being shoved aside, belittled, and actually institutions are being uplifted and verified. In The Complete Patriot's Guide to Oligarchical Collectivism, a book I wrote, I make a point to distinguish and differentiate institutions and individuals, and the confusion of individuals that are applying the rights of individuals to institutions is contributing to the problems that individuals are having. And we're essentially refuting the rights of individuals among us and uplifting institutions that we may be in or that we identify with in some manner. And this is going on all across the country. You know, a big civil rights movement that's happening today is people raising awareness of police abuse. But the message is watered down in not that there isn't racial disparity and racial confusion in these matters, but the point is with police abuse that there is an institution riding over individuals, and we as individuals with beating hearts should all be concerned about this, right? And so comparing individual violence that goes on, it really can't be compared to the violence that institutions do onto individuals. It's totally different. And so recently, the Supreme Court made the opinion that they would apply First Amendment rights to corporate institutions. Well, the Bill of Rights are all designed and pertain to individuals. So how do you do that? Well, an institution doesn't have a beating heart. It doesn't breathe. It cannot speak nor think. So what can it do? It can spend money. So that's what they did, and they kind of brought more confusion into the differentiation of between individuals and institutions by applying the First Amendment rights to institutions.
When I was growing up on the East Coast, I lived in a neighborhood, and each family had about 1 acre of land. And one of the families, a few doors down the street from us, had a swimming pool. And they built a fence around the swimming pool, kind of a stockade fence, about 6 feet tall. And in that family, there were 2 pretty young girls and a very pretty mother. And the idea was if they wanted to go swimming, and this is in the 1960s, if they wanted to go swimming, they could in the privacy of their backyard. They had a fence around their pool. And a fence is a good thing around a pool for a lot of reasons. One, insurance companies require it so people don't just fall in the pool and die if they can't swim. Another is for privacy. Okay, so, I was imagining many times on this broadcast, I've been in that pool, and those neighbors were friends of ours. And as a young person, I was. And I was imagining what would have happened back then if some guy in the neighborhood got a small ladder, like a 4-foot ladder, and peeped over the fence while Mom and the girls were swimming. If that person was caught, he would be ostracized at a minimum, probably driven out of the neighborhood, might even have been beaten, okay, by the guys in the neighborhood for being a peeping Tom. Some kind of a sick person to do that, right? So that's just looking over the fence. So let's extrapolate and bring that to today. We have Facebook spying on us. We have Google spying on us. We have the police spying on us. We have facial recognition in airports terminals right now. And it's for our own good, so they say. We're being watched on cameras on the street corners. We're being watched at the checkout at Walmart with facial recognition connected to the police station. So should they find someone of interest, the cops are ready to go to Walmart and escort you to a jail cell in handcuffs. So, forget about committing a crime. This is just what's happening to us right this very minute. There are cameras everywhere. Some people are so unaware and, at the least, stupid at the most to buy appliances like televisions with cameras in them that watch you while you're watching it. Microphones in televisions so they can listen to what you're doing in your living room or wherever you happen to have your TV. Some people need 24-hour blue screens, so they have them in their bedrooms. So now we have cameras in the bedrooms, microphones in the bedrooms. We have cameras in our notebook computers, and you flip up that screen, and there's a camera looking at you and a microphone listening, all of which can be turned on remotely without your knowledge or permission, and including your cell phones, which have microphones and cameras that can be turned on without your permission or knowledge. And that information gets picked up, and there's even children's applications on the smartphones. And it collects data about where they are. Where they are. Can you imagine that? Where they are and what they're doing. Children's applications. I'm talking about children's games. They think they're playing a game on their phone, and I don't know why they have a smartphone anyway. But some parents think that their children need to have a smartphone to indoctrinate them into the maladies of society. But here we go. We are being watched 24/7. Now, I contrast that with the swimming pool and the stockade fence. And I got to tell you, if it was my girlfriend or my mother or my sister in that pool, if I were a member of that family, and there was a peeping Tom watching, there would be black and blue everywhere. I'd love to hear your comments on that little analogy, Ethan Indigo Smith. And your book, it's on Amazon. It looks like it's $16 paperback, and it looks like it's free. Is that right?
The Matrix of Fear, it's free.
Yeah, there you go. We'll be right back. Ethan Indigo Smith is with us, and Ethan, I was talking about peeping Toms. Did you have a reaction to what I was saying?
Well, I love that analogy to the police state today, and in parallel to what I was talking about with the institutions and individuals' confusion, we would, rightfully so, snuff an individual who's being a peeping Tom, but we essentially shrug our shoulders to the institutions that are taking advantage of us in the same and actually worse manners, right? So it really speaks to not only the Orwellian system that we have going on today, but that idea that we'll essentially bow to what I call, to ring an old phraseology, I call it the divine right of institutions, right? We used to have to kowtow to the divine right of kings and their monopolistic globalization, British East India Company corporate institutions. Well, now we essentially do the same thing. We say, well, that's just how it is. You know, let's just eat and be happy because we can't do anything. Well, that's the reason we can't do anything when we have that perspective, right? So, you mentioned my book is free right now. The Matrix of Four, the philosophy of the duality of polarity, is a free ebook. And a lot of things can be broken down by way of the duality of polarity or four. And there's actually 4 types of institutions one could see. And by understanding institutions, we can better understand what's going on. There's the corporate, religious, government. Those are the main 3. And when we're lucky, we have media institutions that are the 4th branch, right? The 4th type of institution, right? So government, religious, corporate, and information, right? Sometimes the information institutions are simply just corporate entities themselves, right? But this is the idea that we have independent information institutions.
You know, I was thinking about something I mentioned on the air this week, Airbnb. And what is Airbnb? Well, it's bread and breakfast. So you can rent, a property And the air part is you bring your own air mattress. That's, I guess, where it came from initially. Well, there's a story about cameras being put in the bedrooms. You know, like the alarm clocks. Like if you go to a motel, you see the digital clock, and you can set the alarm and for wake up, or you can place the call to the front desk and say, "Would you wake me up at whatever time? I'm in room whatever." Okay, but at the B&Bs they don't have that, so they have these clocks. And now what's happening is people who own these B&Bs are putting these clock radios in the rooms, the bedrooms, and they're aiming the clock radio at the bed, and they have these cameras attached to Wi-Fi. So a person could be featured in a movie without being aware of it, right? And then Walmart. Let's go to Walmart. Well, I've seen videos of guys, perverts, taking their cell phones and reaching over, like getting down on their knees to kind of pick up something on the low shelf. But what they do is they have their camera of their cell phone in their hand. They reach up under a girl's skirt, and they video that. Now, I got to tell you, if one of my boys saw that happening to Mrs. Finelli or their girlfriends, that guy would not be able to get up by himself. The next thing that would happen is there'd be a stretcher for that guy to be put on to find out if he's still alive or not. That's the kind of thing that would happen in my family. But yet, we allow this nonsense at the government level, and as you said, at the corporate level, the government level. Heck, we even allow priests to commit sexual crimes, right? And we allow the media to spy on us through their applications. This is crazy. So the question I have for you when we come back, Ethan Indigo Smith, is how do we fight back? Now, there are a lot of ways I can think of, but I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. Because I'm not willing to say, oh, well, it's too big. There's nothing I can do about it. It's not that big, and I can opt out. Let's talk about that when we come back. Ethan Indigo Smith's with us. So, Ethan, a couple villages down the road is where I tend to go to have my driver's license and vehicle registration and titles, renewed. Well, they got a new camera, and it was this fancy new camera, and it was renewal time, and they wanted to take my picture. And I knew through reading that they were interested in retinal scans. So what I did was I walked up to the camera, and I said, "Wow, this is really wow, this is the new camera, isn't it?" And I'm looking, Vincent, you can't take a picture of that. Vincent, don't go. You have to stand. You can't get that close to it, Vincent. The gal knows me. Okay, so it's almost a one-man band. So she knows me, and she's telling me to be careful, don't get so close. And there's no marking that says what this thing is. Yeah, on the front, you can't tell. It's just a blue camera. So she's ready to take my picture. She says, "Okay, ready, 1, 2," and I close my eyes. And she said, "Vincent, you closed your eyes." And I said, "Well, I can't help it. I can't help it because, when that flash goes off, I just can't help it. My eyes close." She said, "All right, let's do it again." So she says, 1, 2, 3. "Vincent, you closed your eyes." 1, 2. "Vincent," I said, "I can't help it. Just the thought of that flash going off, my eyes close." Well, I have the only driver's license I've ever heard of in the state of Missouri where my eyes are closed. Why? Well, I think it's because that flash makes my eyes close. Actually, I think it's really because I knew that they were going to sell the scans of my eyes to a private company, third party in Georgia, which they did. So here's the story. In San Bernardino, California, a little police department, policing, controlling about 2 million people, 1,800 sworn officers, according to TheVerge.com. Well, they are capturing, they've captured about 500,000 retinal scans already. Who? Well, these would be people they've arrested. That doesn't mean someone's done something wrong. It means they've just been arrested. Okay? They're doing about 189 of these a day, and it was just kind of a little test to see how it would work. And it was like so much fun that it's gotten to be a routine thing, and they keep taking these images and sharing them with other government corporation agencies. And people are, that's okay. Well, it's for our own safety, right? Ethan, what are your thoughts about all that I've said about this invasion of spy technology monitoring our every move?
Well, when you tell that story, it's hilarious, but it's a dark humor, isn't it? Because really what it comes down to is that we're that apathetic to the institutions of the world. And also, we're becoming passive-aggressive, right, that will react out on individuals who aren't the problem, right? It's almost like, the farm animals are attacking each other, but not who's responsible for their situation. It's very Orwellian Animal Farm-esque. I think the dilution by the Supreme Court with the Citizens United decision of the First Amendment, the dilution of the First Amendment, its meaning, indicates its power also, right? And the First Amendment has 5 parts. And I like to tell everyone who's a thinking person and a patriot, who calls themselves a patriot, the First Amendment is first, and the Second Amendment backs it up, right? And so your point to self-defense and standing up for those around us, I think, is a very uniquely American thing. Most people around the world, in a cultural sense, are essentially trained to bow to the institutions. And this is becoming more and more normal here in the United States. However, our country is founded on individual rights of the First Amendment, which essentially, before we have to knock the perpetrator out, we have the right to say, hey, no, we're not going to stand for that, right? And so the 5 freedoms of the First Amendment are only applicable to individuals. However, institutions have tricked it and tried to give these individual rights, and also these rights are a prescription for individual empowerment procedure to keep and take back our rights as well, right? So what I call stage 1 is question, but the 5 freedoms of the First Amendment, as I call them, are question, communicate, speak out, stop, and act. And these are individual empowering concepts which the world at that time was not accustomed to. We were collectively all accustomed to bowing to the divine right of kings.
Ethan Indigo Smith, you're a pretty young guy. You might not have seen this television series that started in February of 1968. And it was called Columbo, Columbo. Have you ever seen that?
I'm totally familiar. The detective,
okay.
Right?
So Lieutenant Frank Columbo was the lead character in this television series, and Peter Falk played him, and Peter Falk had one of his eyes surgically removed. So for most of his life, he had one eye and one glass eye. And in this series, you would see Peter Falk as Columbo. When he was looking at something, he would get real close to it because he had one eye, and he would get closer than anyone would get to looking at an object. And the character that I play when I'm out and about, to what used to be the embarrassment of my family and my children, was Lieutenant Columbo. So when I looked at this camera for my driver's license picture, I got really close. I mean, unnaturally close. Really close. Like as if I were looking at it, as if it were a microscope lens that I was using. That close is how close I got. Way closer than anybody would ever get. And that's what I do when I question. So when I used to go to Lowe's to buy, things like paint, I'd have paint mixed custom color for our house. I'd go to the cashier and they'd say, okay, I need to see your ID. And I would say things like, oh, I didn't know you need to have an ID to buy paint. Well, we just want to see you, make sure it's you. You don't think it's me. Well, no, we think it's you. But we need to see your ID. I mean, I would stall them as long as I could stand it, which was way longer than the people behind me in line could stand it. I would tie up the line, just being confused. And you mentioned question. Number one, first thing you do is question. And that's what I do. I question. Because I want to make sure I understand. Help me understand. Maybe you can, show me why I don't quite understand this, why I don't get it, why it seems so foreign to me. But, I'd love to understand it so I could comply. But it's so hard for me to understand. And the more angry they get, the harder it is for me to understand, the longer it takes. That's the method I use. Do you think that's out of control, wrong, or do you agree with that?
No, I think that's great, because actually most people are so caught up with simply making assumptions that they should do as they're told that they don't question procedure at all. And more, what I've noticed and what you alluded to when we communicated earlier is that not only are individuals confused about what rights to apply to institutions and individuals, and we're all getting our institutions and individuals mixed up, but also institutions are belittling the treatment of the individuals that they deal with all across the board. All the corporate, as you said, with trying to get a hold of a person, they're all becoming less functional for individuals. They're all obviously, blatantly functioning as they pertain to other institutions. Individuals become less important, relegated, and like Orwell said, if you want to imagine the future, imagine a boot stomping down on a human face forever, and that boot is the boot of the institutions, right? So it's
yeah, and back to the Sam's Club discussion. So when I go through Sam's Club, have you been to a Sam's Club where you walk in and they've got a person, most of the time it's a gal, and she wants to see your card, your membership card, when you come in, and then you buy your things and you use the chip on your card, and then you get a receipt, and when you go out the door, there's another person to check to make sure that you have the receipt for the items that are in your cart. Have you gone through that kind of a process?
Of course.
Okay. All right. So when I go through Sam's Club, to the embarrassment of my family, I always say the same thing. I look confused. I appear to be Columbo, and I wait my turn to be processed before I go through the exit door. And I hand the guy's got his hand out for my receipt, or the gal's got her hand out to look at my receipt. And I always say the same thing. I'm always appearing to be confused. And I say, I think there are more items in my cart than are on this receipt. Now, that would indicate that I haven't paid for some of the items in my cart, right? So naturally, that heightens their awareness, and they want to make sure that I haven't added some items that I haven't paid for. And it's always the same thing. They say, no, it's right. You've got the right number of items in your cart. It matches the receipt. Then the next thing I say is, I'm so glad you're here to help me. I'm not sure the prices are right on this receipt. Can you make sure I paid the right amount for each of these items in my cart? And you know what that does? It slows down everything. Because they don't know how to react to that. They don't know what to do. And sometimes when I'm asked for my ID at a checkout, I go, I'll be right back. It's in my car. And I leave. I leave all my stuff right there on the conveyor belt. And I come back 15 minutes later. I go, I don't have it. Don't have it. We'll be right back. Class, even though Peter Falk passed away in 2011, June of 2011, you can still carry on the tradition. Okay? There doesn't have to be just one person carrying on the tradition of Peter Falk, meaning Vin Finelli, in the way I behave. And think about it like this. I don't yell. I don't scream. You know, when I get in these situations, I don't throw a temper tantrum. But I do quietly call attention. Everybody gets to see, you know, Vin Finelli in character often when I'm out in public because of the character I portray. I'm asking for help. I stall down the system. I grind it down to where they can't stand it. And in the case of Lowe's, they don't ask for ID anymore because I ground, well, at least in the local Lowe's that I used to go to, because I would grind down the system. I would get a whole bunch of plumbing parts, and then they'd ask for an ID, and I'd say, I can't do it. Or it's in the car. Or let me see if I can find it. And I hold up everybody. I'm trying to help them. I'm trying to do what they want. It's just hard. And the more anxious they get, the more difficult it is for me to comply because I get confused. And so a whole bunch of us can be Columbo all over. And I think that's what Ethan Indigo Smith was saying. Question, communicate, stop, act. Is that what you're saying, Ethan?
Absolutely. There's so many ways as individuals that we can, embody civil disobedience without having to necessarily raise our voice or go further than that. And eventually, we see it happen time and time again in recent history in a matter of hours where institutions will essentially say, we're not doing that way anymore. Too many people spoke up, right? So 500, 5,000, well, that's something. But as soon as the numbers start to be statistical, individuals cannot refuse but to listen and bow. And actually, we see this in all over history in time and place. Institutions will do whatever the individuals allow them to do. And, when we stand up and speak up, that's when things shift for our comfort and our benefit as individuals. This is what happened in the United States. And this is what is happening in other sections of the world, and also what institutions are trying always to prevent.
So if you're in line and and it's not going your way, and your way is, above board and honest, you can use these tactics to delay. You can delay and you can tie them up. Now, you're going to feel initially when you do this, you're going to feel bad for the people behind you because you're holding them up. Actually, it's not you holding them up. It's the store or the government office that's holding them up. You're just trying to show everybody. And what I do is I figure, where else can they get this much entertainment for free, right? Really. So I just, I put on a show. I use some humor. And, people all around here know who I am. They know what I'm like. And they're kind of amused. But I refuse to be treated as a criminal. I refuse to be stomped on. I refuse to have that boot on my face that you gave that mental image of, Ethan Indigo Smith. So can you share with us what you do in your world? And by the way, class, if you'd like to contact Ethan Indigo Smith, usaprepares.com. Click on the instructors tab. There's a link. They'll take you to web information about them. Or you can type in Ethan Indigo Smith. Very quickly, Ethan, your suggestions for getting that boot off our faces.
Speak up and stand up for yourself and those around you. That's bottom line, right?
Yeah. Ethan, I love broadcasting with you. You're so articulate and well-reasoned, insightful. You bring information to the fore. I really appreciate the insight that you provide here to our classroom. We'll have to do this again and again and again and again. And if you'd like to go to Amazon.com and find his books, right there, Amazon.com, Ethan Indigo Smith. Thank you so much, Ethan. Everyone all set? Cocked, locked. Here we go, hour number 2 of USA Prepares. Debra Brewster is with us. John is engineering the broadcast in Minnesota at GCN. I'm Vincent Finelli. Welcome, Debra.
Good morning.
You know, Debra, I've never told this story on air, but let me share it. So I was in one of those meetings, one of those ham club meetings, ham radio operators in Virginia when I lived there. And, I was talking to one of the guys there, and he said, so, do you ever have your water heater, hot water heater, leak, from too much pressure? And I said, no, I've got a temperature and pressure valve on ours, and they all come with them, so, no, that's never happened. And I said, I keep a spare one just in case. And he said, well, his leaks all the time. And I asked him about that, and he said, well, he lives at the bottom of the hill. And here's the story, class. And I don't think you've ever heard this before. But here it is. So this guy lives with his family at the bottom of a hill in a neighborhood, and the water tank is at the top of the hill. And they want to have about 40 pounds of water pressure in this municipality. So the water pressure at the top of the hill is 40 pounds per square inch. But at the bottom of the hill, it's about 110. So his hot water heater kicks on, and sometimes it just has so much pressure that that the pressure release, the temperature and pressure valve releases the pressure so the hot water heater doesn't explode, literally, and it leaks all over his basement. It's kind of a common occurrence. So have we ever thought about too much pressure? Well, there's one situation where this guy lives at the bottom of the hill. So that's just one more reason not to live at the bottom of a hill, if you happen to have a municipal water supply. Well, here's another reason. Debra, have you ever heard of anything like that?
No, I haven't, but, certainly on the forefront right now is obviously gas leaks in Massachusetts that we had, briefly talked about earlier, just the condition of America's infrastructure. There are so many issues that are out there on the horizon that put all of our well-being and emotional and financial security at risk. And, we just have to begin to take seriously all these things. It's just like the hurricane going into the Carolinas. The people that, celebrate it, think it's a party, and don't evacuate. I just caught on the Internet today, it was a photograph streaming of a house. They must have had a camera inside of it. Hopefully, I don't suspect that they were in there. But the house was literally almost filled with to the ceiling, and you could just see the waves of the ocean just roaring through the house. I mean, how terrifying. I mean, there's so many situations that we have to ponder all these various, scenarios. I had a neighbor yesterday that says, man, I got enough problems of the day just paying my bills. I can't even think about those things. But if we are distressed in this good time, we have no clue emotionally, just physically, what is ahead. And, so many people, they're just either ignorant. In fact, that would be like where you have a lack of knowledge. You just lack a general understanding of things. You're unaware. You're just kind of oblivious or unacquainted, unfamiliar, or just you're more, worse off. You're ill-informed or, unenlightened. But then there's also people that are downright, they have stupidity. They have just behaviors that lack good sense or judgment. They're foolish. They don't want to ponder things. They just their heads buried in the sand. It's not that they are deliberately do it, meaning they don't lack the capability to be, smart or alert, but they just choose to be stupid. And then, of course, you kind of got to think some of the people that are ignorant are as well. I know a lot of youth are that way because they're dumbed down through our educational system. But we as adults, we have to ponder these things. We have got to wake up. I mean, we are coming 10 years out of the greatest recession this country. Now, not the Great Depression, but a recession that within almost overnight inflicted huge losses on companies like, Bear Stearns or Lehman Brothers or AIG. And, people didn't even realize that, the average American, the toxicity of just what was happening in the financial markets. And yet, fast forward 10 years, what are people thinking?
Okay, I've got a comment.
Yes.
Yeah, I've got a comment. So our son, you know our son, he has set up an automotive repair business, one of our boys. And I get to spend a lot of time with him. And in his business, right after the broadcast, I work with him and I look over things. I'm like the senior guy. Well, every single vehicle that has been here to his repair company, if you want to call it that, is low on oil. Every single engine that comes in here is low on oil. Every one. Not one of them has the correct engine oil level. Not one. Not one. Let me say it a different way. Not one. So who drives these vehicles? Well, young people and older people. I'm saying the 60-plus crowd and young people. Now, more engines are low on oil for the young crowd, I'm talking about the millennials, than the 60-plus crowd. But every one of them is low. So is it ignorance? Is it apathy? I know the older crowd knows to check the oil. I know that they know that. The younger crowd, I'm not so sure. Well, one thing that we really haven't talked about was, and it goes back to this guy in Virginia at the ham radio club when he talked about this hot water heater. And I said, well, do you have an electric one or a gas one? He said, I would never have a flame in my house. That means no gas stove, no gas hot water heater, no gas logs, no kind of a flame that is ongoing in his house that's powered by gas. He wouldn't have one. Well, so, Debra, you mentioned the situation that's happening right outside of Boston, Massachusetts right now. It started yesterday, and one house exploded, then another house exploded, the chimneys exploded. Well, what happened? Well, there's a gas pressure problem. Now, who has thought about this? Very few, I'd have to say. Just like the water pressure, and that's why I decided to talk about the water pressure first. So we don't think about too much water pressure. We think about, wow, there's no water coming out. Yeah, not enough water pressure. We all know what that's like. But too much water pressure, very few of us have ever thought about that or heard about it. But here's the other one, which is way, way, way worse. And that is too much gas pressure in the natural gas lines. So when people think about emergencies, they think, well, okay, I can have a gasoline-powered generator, but I've got to store some gasoline. It doesn't last very long, and it comes up to carburetors. And some people have said, well, let's get natural gas generator, because there's always natural gas. It's always there. It never goes away. Well, what about too much natural gas pressure? Well, that's what's happened outside of Boston. Okay, what they did was, in order to stop this problem, they shut off the natural gas. It makes a lot of sense, but there's still pressure in the lines. Well, what kind of pressure are we talking about? Well, it's unbelievable. So the interstate pipelines, the highways of natural gas transmission, have the gas pressurized in the pipeline at pressures from 200 pounds per square inch to 1,500 pounds per square inch. And what is the pressure that your appliances operate? Well, about 1/4 pound per square inch. Okay. How fast does the natural gas move through these pipelines? About 15 miles an hour. Okay, so it's really moving. So what happens when there's too much pressure? Well, there are regulators, and then they tend to blow the diaphragms in the regulators, and then natural gas comes leaking out. Then all you need is a spark, and then you have an explosion. And you've seen it on TV. It looks like there was a natural gas fire, in the city. Boom. There's just one building. Well, there are about 100 gas explosions and fires in the Boston area right now. The fire chief said that, a fire rescue chief, Michael B. Mansfield, told reporters on CNN.com, "I've been in the fire service for almost 39 years, and I've never seen anything like this in my career. It looked like Armageddon. It really did." That's his quote. Because the fires are just blowing up houses and buildings. And if you look at, and I'll post this on our website so you can see it, and when the firefighters are battling these house fires, here's something you've never seen, class. Firefighters are on their knees. Now, it's not like they're praying. It's because they know that when debris goes flying out of one of these houses when they explode, the glass is going to come flying out, the boards, all these projectiles are going to come flying out. So they're staying low. They are in combat. They're in combat mode. There are images of firefighters hiding behind their equipment, their fire trucks, because they know that there's going to be shrapnel coming toward them, and they want to stay out of the way of it. That's what's going on. Are you prepared for that? The point is, we're not paying attention. Debra Brewster's with us. We'll be right back. So in a lot of cities, the natural gas and water is provided by the cities, city government corporations. Cities responsible for this. So what are we talking about? Massachusetts, the areas are in Andover, North Andover, and Lawrence, Massachusetts right now. The gas lines have been shut off, but they're still pressurized. The gas has to be consumed before they become depressurized or reach atmospheric pressure. Okay, so what else has happened? Well, the utilities shut off the electricity to all of these homes because sparks from electricity could cause more fires. So here we have an outrageous situation where the gas provider, and I'm not 100% sure, but I have a feeling it's the city that's at fault. Now, what happens when the city blows up all these homes and people get killed and injured? And you have all these fires all over town. What happens? How do you get the city to cover these costs? Right now, there are firefighters from 50 different fire departments working to slow down the flames.
Wow.
This is serious business. And that's what happens when we depend on other people. Like,
it's even
city governments.
There's a saying, Vince, that 3 is 2 and 2 is 1 and 1 is none. And even in my goal to be self-sufficient, I've done a lot of duplication. Now, I happen to have a main house and a guest house, and then I have a travel trailer. So this is why I urge, and I'm going to tell just a brief story, but the point behind it is you have to begin to implement procedures to get through that learning curve so you aren't ignorant, so you don't look stupid in the most important time, when the real big crises hit this country. Now, in my main house, I have a wood-burning fireplace. I choose not to use it because I don't want the chimney, let's say, to be clogged, and I don't have a need to use it at this point. I have, obviously, a lot of woods, on my land, or lumber on my land that I, could derive from the trees. But in my guest house, I have a heat pump. I also have an electric, like antique-looking firebox. But then I also have a propane wall unit. And I just put this propane unit in. And I can't tell you, just after I bought this little Mr. Heater, and I get it, and it says, well, you need to have this regulator. I went all over Kingdom Come looking for this regulator. Then I had to buy all the brass fittings to connect it on both ends, the heater to the heater, in between the lines to the wall where it's piped in. And literally, I can't tell you, 3 of us looked at it, and we kept checking. We couldn't get the gas to come through. So we thought, is the dope? Do we have too much dope? Did it clog it up? Took the fittings back apart again. We had a plumber that initially we bought all the fittings from, and it took like 8 fittings to get all the proper connections so we could make this heater work. Well, finally we just gave up. After an hour of trying and keep, putting the little burner on, the electronic igniter, we just finally said, you know what, I got to get propane in the tank. I'll just have to pay the service call and just have them look at it. Maybe there's some blockage in the line. I don't know why it's not coming in. Well, lo and behold, they come in. Unfortunately, it cost me $145 for my stupidity, but at the tiniest, you could hardly even see it. All the connections to connect the different orifices were in place, but the actual regulator in between, there was a little arrow, and we had to point it in the wrong direction, so the gas couldn't go through. My stupidity, none of us saw it. And but nevertheless, I chose, okay, I'm not going to keep doing this. I don't know what we're doing wrong. And I paid to have something so stupid, but here's the more stupid part. They came out and they said, you don't even need this regulator. You have a regulator at the pump. So we went through God knows how much hour, times, and money wasted. But, at least I'm, trying to have these duplicate safety nets in place, and there is a learning curve, and you are going to have some stupid things or things because you're ignorant that you don't do. It's the people that do nothing. And then a third scenario, the travel trailers for when my granddaughter comes in. She kind of likes the privacy. She stays into that. And we have like
hold that thought. Hold that thought. We'll be right back.
Okay.
Debra Brewster's with us. Debra, I have one quick comment about propane. And I installed the propane system in our house. I ran the gas lines. I used black iron pipe. And in order to get the pressure set at the regulator properly, I had to buy a device called a manometer. And this is a low-pressure dial gauge device. You can get them digitally. You can use a water column to do it yourself. But I decided to buy a professional one. I think it was about $20 on the internet. So I bought a used one, and I can check my gas pressure all the time. So that's something you may want to put on your list if you're going to have propane at your family farm in Missouri. It's a manometer. Okay? Just a thought. You were going to tell us about the travel trailer?
Yeah. So in any case, I have a guest staying at it who got displaced from her employment, and so she's looking for new work, and she's staying in my travel trailer right now. Well, she decided to get ready for an interview and she didn't want to use up all the counter space in the bathroom because they're not large in a travel trailer. So she had her blow dryer going in the travel trailer, and she plugged in her hot curlers into an outlet. Now, what people don't know, again, it all has to do with why we need to, do things, test, double test. When you're in a travel trailer, usually you will pop the fuse if you use an appliance that's about much higher than, say, 1250, 1350 tops, and you're going to start popping fuses on your outlets. Well, when she had them plugged in, somehow or another, I wasn't there, it caught on fire. It melted. The outlet was not a GFI, but it still did not trip a breaker. The outlet caught on fire. The fire went up the wall. This is a brand new $36,000 trailer, and she extinguished the fire. I don't know how. Again, I wasn't watching this happen. But the point being, there's so many things that we have to meditate upon, all these scenarios. and we've got to try stuff. Yes, it's good to have things, but we also need to learn to operate things. And so we're not ignorant. And even simple things, the fire extinguishers, having multiple in multiple buildings. When you're in pretty much anywhere, if we have a civil unrest, whether you're in the country or in the city, you better learn to be self-sufficient. And you need to be able to have multiple layers of contingencies for every challenge that you can, let's say, encounter. When I have my guest house, I keep all my, the same prepper type of supplies, maybe a little bit less, clothing, food, medical, even in my guest house, because if my main house should become compromised, I at least can go to the guest house or to the travel trailer. Everything we do in life, you really have to have a layering to protect yourself and not be ignorant. But the biggest point that I thought we'd maybe get to today was even talking about the risks that are out there on the horizon just with our financial markets. Yes, we're just like 9/11 had its anniversary. We're coming to another financial anniversary, and not a whole lot has changed. In fact, I was just reading on the news that Bitcoin, one of the big brokerage houses, decided to make derivatives on that. Now, the risk to our financial markets, right now there's 1.2 quadrillion derivatives, which is basically 20 times the size of all the world's economies. And basically the same people that ran us into ground, the financial traders on Wall Street, they rule the roost. And the risk managers, the regulators, even if they wanted to, let's say, to limit the risk, they probably don't have the power. They certainly, obviously, don't have the knowledge to, stop for what is likely to be the next big crushing event. And I don't think it will be limited to this country. It is going to be global. I think when the next shoe drops, you want to talk about crisis? I mean, look at the hurricane that's hitting the Carolinas. There was a clip on the internet. The food shelves, bare. People just don't even realize. I mean, I'm talking bare. You wouldn't think in America that we would have that. So there's so many things that people are failing to prepare for, and it's just crazy. And there's indicators out there, but we're choosing not to pay attention to those indicators. I mean, if you look at housing prices in high-risk markets like Wall Street, you look at the subprime auto loans that are rapidly growing in, let's see, the amount, the tremendous amount of student debt, the corporate debt. The corporations now, because of the enticement of low interest rates or zero interest rate policies, are tremendously in debt, buying back their own stock and doing a lot of things to increase their profits, but literally they're not prepared for movements in the market such as hyperinflation where interest rates could skyrocket. And, you've just got dozens of retail chains around the world that are just burdened with debt, and closing, not necessarily around the world, but certainly in this country we see it. And that throws thousands of people out of the work. There's so many indications of all this chaos that's happening around us, and people aren't paying attention. And really, when the first recession happened, people, basically they said, well, I got to keep my car, payment because I need at least to have a job, and they felt like they wouldn't get foreclosed on their home. Well, what if now the next big hedge is the subprime auto loan? Because people may have two cars because it's mainly on second cars. And they go, well, I'll just give that back. And there's derivatives that are, those portfolios are, being bundled in derivatives. There's such a mess globally, in the financial markets, and it's just like crazy. And again, people are just ignoring it. They don't want to talk about it in the financial media. That's not the narrative. Nobody's covering this and telling people, wake up. And yet I know people still are feeling the pressure of inflation and, prices inching up. And wages aren't going up to keep up with inflation. It's just, what's next? I mean, there's just so many things. This is why we must begin to put our family plan in place.
I've got a couple comments for you. First, you talked about the outlet that caught on fire. I believe I know the answer. I haven't seen it. I haven't seen the trailer, but I believe I know the cause. And there are two ways you can wire an outlet. I'm talking about a receptacle in the wall. One is there are screw terminals. There are typically 5 screws on a wall outlet, 2 for the black wires, 2 for the white wires, and 1 for the ground wire. Well, I believe, and on the back of many outlets today, that's too hard to shape the wire, strip the wire, shape it in a circle almost, and then put it around the screw, the threads of the screw, then crimp it so that it's tight against the screw, and then screw the screw down against the wire. Too hard. So what people are doing now, it's much faster. They will strip the wire and shove it in this little tiny hole in the back of the outlet, which is just a pressure connection that's way lower in contact area than the screw terminal type. So I believe what happened is that outlet was overloaded, and the contact area of the push-in connection of the outlet caused the outlet to overheat, caused the fire. So I think if you just take that wall plate off, if it's still available, if it hasn't burned up, take a look, and I believe that you'll see that the outlet was connected with the push-in terminals rather than the screw-on terminals.
It's funny you should mention that. That's exactly what happened. I had an electrician friend of mine, because my husband was out of town. He literally installed a whole new, different type of device in the wall. But you're right, that was the kind of outlet. That's funny. I never, would have really paid attention to something like that.
Well, and it's allowed by code, which is ridiculous. In our house, we have used the screw terminals on every single outlet, and we soldered every joint, where wires come together under those wire nuts. We literally stripped them, cleaned them, soldered them with rosin core solder so that there would be a connection that would not corrode over time. So the wires in our house, the connection should last well beyond my lifetime to whomever, becomes the owner of this house, in the future. So anyway, what happens when you hire an electrician? Many times they take these shortcuts. And in our house, in our farm, there are no shortcuts. We do not take shortcuts of any kind because we know that there are costs associated with shortcuts. That was one. You mentioned another thing. Oh, by the way, all the other outlets in your travel trailer are probably wired the same way. So if you want, next time you come over, I'll teach you how to do it. And you can take apart the wiring of your travel trailer and you can fix it yourself. I'll be glad to show you how to do that, Debra. Next time you come over, and we ought to have a get-together soon anyway. Next thing you mentioned, the food shelves were bare due to the panic buying. You didn't say panic buying, but I assume that's what you meant, in preparation for the hurricane on the East Coast, the Carolinas and Georgia and Virginia and so forth. Well, if you go to Walmart class, you go to Walmart now, you'll find that they've made the aisles more convenient for you. So instead of having a tough time having one cart coming your way and you going toward that other cart and having to negotiate these narrow lanes or aisles, you don't have to worry about that anymore. They've widened the aisles, which means that they've taken out shelving, which means that there's less inventory in the Walmart stores. Less inventory. More room to, more leg room, if you will. And who else has done that? Aldi. Aldi's done it a different way. What Aldi has done is taken out food and replaced it with Chinese junk, trinkets, dollar store junk. Now, when I go to Aldi, I'm not looking for Chinese dollar store junk. I am looking for food, period. Food, that's it. I'm not looking for a hammock. I'm not looking for cheap utensils. I'm not looking for placemats. I'm looking for food. Well, they've replaced a lot of that inventory space with Chinese dollar store junk. That's just, and why am I saying this? Because Debra said, it's right in front of you. I'm paraphrasing, of course. The indicators are right in front of you. All you have to do is say, wow, what's going on? Why are they doing this? And if you ask, they don't even know at the stores. They don't know why. We'll be right back. Class, Debra Brewster's with us. She has her master's in business administration, and she's a farmer. Didn't know his farm, but now she does, and I'm delighted to be broadcasting with her because she's telling you as it really is. And there's a lot more to this simple electrical fire than meets the eye. Let me explain why I'm saying that. So, a company that's in the business of manufacturing these camper trailers wired it such that it was a fire hazard, in my opinion. I would never do it that way. I have never done it that way. I've seen it done that way. I'm talking about strip the wires and push them into the back of the socket so that you don't have to wrap the wire around the screw and tighten it. Well, it is a fire hazard. Now, it's a fire hazard when you first do it, and it becomes even more of a fire hazard over time, because what happens is that little connection point where the spring-loaded, I don't even know what to call it, this pressure, I don't even know how to describe this. You push the wire into this hole, and there's a spring piece of metal that contacts the wire inside either the switch or the receptacle. But over time, that connection gets hot and cold and hot and cold, and that spring tension becomes weaker and weaker, which causes the connection to get hotter and hotter and hotter. So over time, it's even more of a fire hazard. Well, is Debra's travel trailer the only one, or camper trailer the only one that's wired like that? No. Houses are wired like that. Buildings are wired like that. Garages are wired like that. Because now it's get it done and get out. So people who do electrical wiring want to get it done and get out. And it's way faster. I talked to Kyle, USA Preparedness instructor, about this. He's an electrician. He doesn't do it that way. He's seen it done that way. He would never do it that way. Why? Because it's dangerous. So now we have a whole bunch of people who are doing these things to us, and we don't know it because it's buried in the wall. Debra, what I'm saying is what you've said. I'm just saying it in different words. You have to learn how to do it yourself and do it right, because if you hire somebody to do it, they're going to take the shortcuts. Isn't that what you're saying?
That is partly what I'm saying. I was going to weave this back into the biggest risk that I see that we have as a nation. And the main thing, too, the point, what you don't understand, you're not going to be able to change, in this case with the world economy, which I perceive as our biggest risk. You're not going to be able to properly regulate it. When I talked about this 1.2 quadrillion of derivatives, which is bigger than 20 times the world's economy, if the traders that buy and sell this stuff on Wall Street don't even understand what they're doing and selling it, we know even Congress is not going to understand it and to regulate it. And because our world is really driven by profits, just like the food shortage, when you have companies like ADM, Archer Daniels Midland, or Cargill, or Monsanto, and all these companies, they're driven by profit. Decisions are made, that will affect us. If they put the small farmer out of business, that small farmer in the old days, if people were down on their luck, they would give food. Even in the Bible, they would let them go glean the fields, the things that they didn't initially get in the farming, let's say, where you collect up the wheat. And, people don't realize decisions we make, there are big ramifications. If the small farmer's put out of business, he can't jump in and feed the local market. If this whole big thing of the stock market crashes, do you think these big publicly traded companies, care about us? No way. And always think they can use food as a weapon against us.
No disagreement. And it all goes back to what you said, money. corporate greed and shortcuts. And just a perfect example is a shortcut was taken because of corporate greed on that camper trailer with the electrical outlet, which caused a fire. Debra, you've got to go through the whole trailer and check it out. Check every outlet, every connection, every switch. Thanks so much for being with us, Debra.
Oh, you're welcome. Take care.
You too.